There's a moment most people have had at least once. You're sitting at a dinner table, maybe with family, maybe with friends, and someone brings up money. Maybe they mention a salary. Maybe they talk about an investment or a debt or how much they've saved. And the room shifts. Not dramatically, just quietly. People look down, someone changes the subject, the laughter gets a little too loud, and within 60 seconds, the conversation has moved on to the weather, to anything else. Nobody says a word about what just happened. You probably didn't either, because you felt it too, that invisible rule. We don't talk about this here. Here's what I want you to sit with. That silence didn't feel like a problem. It felt like relief. But the silence that feels like protection is the same silence that's been quietly costing you, not occasionally, every single day. That's what this video is about. Not budgets, not investment strategies. We're going into the psychology behind why smart, hardworking people have built an automatic reflex to avoid money conversations, and why that reflex is quietly keeping them financially stuck. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you runs much deeper than money habits. Money silence isn't something you decide, it's something you feel your way into, usually without realizing it. It's the moment a colleague mentions what they earn, more than you, and something tightens. You want to ask how they got there, if your number is normal, if you're behind. Instead, you smile and say, "Oh, that's great," and change the subject. Because asking feels like admitting, and admitting feels like losing. It's sitting across from your partner knowing you've never fully told each other the truth, the debt you're still embarrassed about, the savings that feel too small to say out loud, the financial decision from 3 years ago that never came up. Every time it gets close, one of you steers away, the other lets it happen. The unspoken agreement. We're fine. Let's stay fine. It's the job offer you accepted without negotiating, then lying awake that night. What if I'd asked for 5,000 more? They probably would have said yes. Why didn't I just ask? Telling yourself you'll do it next time, knowing even then you'll feel exactly the same way. It's the financial article you close after the first paragraph, not because it was boring, because it was too close. None of these moments feel like decisions, but they are, and they're compounding. Add them up across a year, a career, and they become the architecture of a financial life never really chosen, just defaulted into. The question isn't, why are other people like this? It's, where does this show up for you? Imagine someone asks you right now, what do you actually earn? Your real savings, your real debt. What happens in your body before you even answer? For most people, it isn't calm. There's a quickening, a tightening, something that feels almost like being caught, even though you've done nothing wrong, even though you're a grown adult with every right to that information about yourself. You feel guilty about a number. Think about how strange that is. For most people, those roots go back further than they think. Back to watching a parent go quiet when a bill arrived, absorbing it privately, like it was something to be ashamed of. Back to learning without anyone saying it directly that asking about money made adults uncomfortable, that "are we okay" was a question without a straight answer. So you stopped asking. You filed it under "things we don't bring up." You carried that file into adulthood, unopened. The rule made sense then, but it doesn't get filed under "things I believed as a kid and later revised." It gets filed under "how I am." It becomes the self you carry into every salary negotiation, every financial decision, every moment where money comes up and you feel that pull toward the exit. And then the deeper layer. Somewhere between childhood and now, money stopped being a number and became a verdict. It fused with worth, with whether you've made good choices or wasted time. So when someone asks what you earn, the question you actually hear is, how are you doing at life? When you imagine revealing your real financial picture, not just what you earn, but what you've done with it, where you actually are, it doesn't feel like sharing information. It feels like being graded, like handing someone a report card you haven't read yourself yet, so you hand them a summary instead. I'm doing okay. Things are fine. I'm working on it. That's the performance, and most people have been giving it so long they've half forgotten it's won. Every financial choice you make from inside that performance is shaped more by the fear of being seen than by your actual goals. Even if you'd done all the internal work, you'd still be operating inside a culture that enforces financial silence from the outside. The rule is unspoken but iron. People who talk openly about money are tacky. Well-adjusted, successful people simply don't bring it up. You can talk about your mental health, your marriage, your worst fears at a dinner table, but the moment someone asks what you earn, the air goes cold. So everyone performs. You learn the acceptable version of your financial self, stable, intentional, quietly together, and present it whenever money comes up. Not because you're dishonest, because the alternative feels socially catastrophic. Think about a real room. Someone mentions they've been investing for years. You nod, you've been meaning to start. Someone talks about buying property. You say that's amazing instead of I have no idea how anyone affords that. Someone mentions their financial advisor and internally, am I supposed to have one of those by now? But you don't ask, because asking means admitting you don't know. Here's what's actually happening in that room. Everyone feels exactly like you do. They're just not saying it either. A room full of people performing confidence for an audience doing the exact same thing. That's not a social dynamic. That's a trap. And the entry fee is your silence. Here's where this stops being personal and starts being structural. Everything I've described, the shame, the childhood wiring, the social performance, it didn't arise in a vacuum. It functions, it serves something. The question worth sitting with, who benefits when ordinary people don't talk about money? When employees don't discuss what they earn, compensation stays uneven. You negotiate against someone who knows the range while you're guessing. The rule that made it feel rude to ask didn't appear by accident. When consumers don't ask hard questions about financial products, those products get built around the silence. A fee you didn't understand because you were too embarrassed to ask is still a fee. Your discomfort didn't protect you. It made you easier to charge. When shame keeps people from seeking financial education, decisions get made in isolation, without advice, without comparison, without information that would change the outcome. And here is the mechanism that makes it all work. The trap doesn't need to be enforced, it enforces itself. Your shame does the work, your discomfort does the work. The system doesn't need to silence you, it just needs you to silence yourself. And you do, every time, with the best intentions. That's what makes this a trap, and not just a situation. A situation is something you're in. A trap uses your own instincts to keep you there. Now let's watch it run in a real life. Think about a woman, call her Amara, 34, 6 years at the same company, genuinely good at her job. Every 6 months she gets close. She rehearses it on the commute. I've taken on more responsibility. I'd like to revisit my compensation. The words exist. They sound reasonable in her head. But then she's outside her manager's office and something closes. What if he looks at me differently? What if he realizes I'm not just grateful to be here? She walks in, handles the meeting, walks out without saying it. Next quarter, when the timing is better. The timing is never better. It's been 6 years. 2 colleagues who started after her have already had that conversation and gotten raises. She has no idea, because nobody talks about it. The silence didn't protect Amara's dignity, it transferred her income to someone else. Or think about Daniel, 41, money sitting in a savings account earning almost nothing for a decade. Every time he opens a brokerage app, the same internal voice. You don't know what half these words mean. You're 41, you should know by now. He closes it. He'll research more first, gets overwhelmed, closes that too. The voice isn't protecting him from bad investments, it's protecting his ego from the discomfort of being a beginner. Every year it succeeds, he loses another year of compound growth he'll never get back. Or think about a couple, shared home, shared finances, two separate silences underneath. She has debt from her late 20s she's never fully explained. He knows it exists but has never pushed because asking feels like an accusation. She's never offered because offering feels like confession. They're not hiding from each other, they're hiding for each other, protecting the version of themselves the other person married, building a shared financial future on an incomplete foundation. These aren't edge cases, these are ordinary people doing what feels safe, and what feels safe is quietly working against them. Now let's put a number on it. People who negotiate their salary and advocate for increases throughout their career earn meaningfully more. Some estimates put the lifetime difference at $500,000 or more once you factor in compound raises and investment growth. $500,000. Not from being smarter, not from working harder, from being willing to have one conversation that felt uncomfortable. The people least likely to have that conversation are not lazy or unqualified. They're the ones for whom asking feels wrong. That feeling, that one moment of pre-embarrassment before a sentence never said, is, in many cases, the difference between retiring at 60 and working past 70. Beyond salary, every financial product you didn't understand but didn't ask about is a fee set in someone else's favor. The retirement fund charging 1.2% in annual fees when a comparable option charges 0.05%. Compounded over 30 years, that difference costs tens of thousands of dollars. You didn't choose it because it was better. You chose it because questioning the default felt like admitting you didn't know what you were doing. You were right that you didn't fully know, and that cost you money. But the knowing was one conversation away the whole time. And then the cost that never shows up in a spreadsheet, the wait, the 3 a.m. arithmetic, running numbers in your head you'd never say out loud, never bring to someone who could help, the low hum of financial anxiety underneath everything, the focus it steals, the sleep it shortens. That worry doesn't dissolve because you avoid it. It compounds, exactly like debt. What you don't address quietly grows. The goal isn't to become someone who talks about money all the time. The goal is to stop letting the discomfort make decisions on your behalf. Because right now, for most people, it does. The discomfort decides whether you negotiate, whether you ask the question, whether you finally look at the real numbers. A money conversation is not a performance. It's not a vulnerability. It's just information moving from a place where it can't help you to a place where it can. Think about what that shift would have meant for Amara, not a career overhaul, just one colleague saying, "I asked for a raise last year. Here's how I framed it." One sentence, enough to change 6 years. Because the shame that lives in silence, "I should already know this," doesn't survive contact with reality. Reality almost always says, "You're not as far behind as you think, and even if you are, here's where to start." The people quietly building real financial lives talk about money with partners, with trusted friends, not because they've resolved the discomfort, because they've decided the discomfort is not a stop sign, it's just a feeling. And the shame that kept you quiet, the moment you say the thing you've been afraid to say, the person across from you almost always exhales, "Me too." The silence felt like it was protecting the relationship. The conversation is what actually deepens it. One question you didn't ask before, one number you say out loud, one conversation you stay in. The silence is a habit, and the only thing that breaks a habit isn't wanting to, it's doing something different, once and then again. If something in this video landed, notice what you do with that recognition in the next 30 seconds. Because the pattern shows up right now, too, in the impulse to close the tab, in the voice that says, "Interesting, but that's not really me." Maybe it's Amara's hesitation you recognized, the sentence rehearsed and never said. Maybe it's Daniel's voice. "You should already know this by now." Maybe it's the conversation you and someone close to you have been circling, the number neither of you has said out loud. You know what it is. Name it somewhere. Because here is what I want to leave you with. Your financial situation is not the problem. Your silence about it is. The situation can be worked with, improved, changed, but only once it's spoken. Only once you stop protecting the performance and start engaging with the reality. You are not behind because you're not smart enough. You are not behind because you haven't worked hard enough. In many cases, not all, but many, you're behind because you've been too quiet. That is fixable, starting today, starting with one conversation you've been avoiding. If this video reflected something you've been carrying quietly, drop it in the comments. Not because I need to know, because naming it, even anonymously, is the first break in the silence. And because someone else is going to read your comment and think, that's exactly it. I thought I was the only one. You weren't. You never were.